So today we're looking at something a bit different. It's a very personal story, actually, sent in by a listener.
Mhm.
It details their own journey trying to tackle some stubborn health issues, specifically prostate problems, by really taking things into their own hands.
Yeah, it's not your typical study or research paper. This is one person's experience laid out almost like a step-by-step guide they figured out for themselves. Diet, exercise, fasting, it's all in there.
And they're really clear, aren't they? This is their story, what worked for them. It's shared as a guide, something to learn from, but definitely not medical advice.
Absolutely, stress that point.
So our mission here is to unpack that specific approach. What were the key steps they took? What can we maybe learn from this personal experiment?
And it gets incredibly detailed. I mean, the structure, the phasing, even down to things like, how they handle brushing their teeth.
It's quite something. The level of detail and frankly the dedication involved.
It really is.
So let's start at the beginning. Where did this all come from? The source mentions significant prostate issues kicking off way back in 2005.
Yeah, and apparently, despite seeing doctors, things weren't improving year on year. Actually got worse, they said.
That must have been incredibly frustrating. So the turning point seems to be around 2012. That's when they decided, okay, time for a different approach.
Right, they took control. Started with some big dietary changes. First went vegan, cut way back on junk food, started cooking most meals at home. A pretty major shift already.
But the real breakthrough, or at least what they emphasized made the biggest difference, came much later.
A full decade later, yeah. In 2022, they discovered fasting.
And that seems to be what provided the substantial relief they'd been looking for all that time.
It really shows how sometimes it's not just one thing, is it? It's layering strategies, figuring things out over time, persistence.
Definitely. So after all this experimentation, they landed on what they call the end goal, sort of the 5 core pillars of their final strategy.
Okay, let's break those down.
First pillar, totally eliminating all animal products. So no meat, pork, chicken, dairy, eggs, or fish.
Yeah.
Strictly vegan.
Okay. Pillar 2, getting rid of junk and processed food as much as humanly possible.
Though they did build in some flexibility there, right? Weekends were a bit more relaxed on that front.
Yeah, that weekend flexibility seems key. Pillar 3 was 1 meal a day OMAD.
But again, with a caveat, only Monday to Friday, weekends were off.
Right. Number 4, a big commitment to physical activity. The goal was 12,000 steps every single day.
Which they helpfully quantify as about 10 kilometers or 6.25 miles. They even mention roughly 10 minutes of walking is about 1,000 steps, so you're looking at around 2 hours of walking daily.
That's a serious commitment. And the 5th pillar.
Home-cooked meals. Again, strictly Monday to Friday, reinforcing that pattern.
So vegan, minimal junk, OMAD on weekdays, lots of walking, home cooking on weekdays. That's the target picture.
But they didn't just jump into that end goal. There was a prep phase.
Yes, a recommended 2-month preparation before starting the gradual monthly changes. Smart, really. Easing into it.
So what did that involve? Month 1 of prep.
Month 1 was all about stopping snacks completely. No grazing, not even on fruit or vegetables between meals. Those had to be part of a proper meal.
Interesting. So defining clear meal times from the start?
Exactly. And no soft drinks, no fruit juices, even fresh ones. Only water, black coffee, black tea, or green tea allowed between those meals.
Okay, laying the groundwork for fasting windows later, it seems. And month 2 of prep.
Month 2, cut out all junk food, no exceptions during this phase, and really double down on making meals at home. Build that clean foundation.
Right, getting the habits in place before adding more complexity. Makes sense.
Solid base established.
Okay, so after those 2 prep months, then came the main event, the 12-month gradual progression.
And this is where the plan gets super structured, super incremental.
Let's walk through it. Month 1.
Started gently. A 12-hour fasting window, aimed for 1,000 steps daily. Still eating 3 meals a day, home cooked.
Okay, month 2.
Bumped the fasting to 13 hours, steps up to 2,000 daily. Still 3 home cooked meals.
Month 3.
Fasting window hits 14 hours. Steps goal is 3,000. 3 home cooked meals. You see the pattern.
Yeah, adding an hour of fasting and 1,000 steps each month. So month 4.
15-hour fast, 4,000 steps, 3 home cooked meals.
Then month 5, there's significant change.
Right. Fasting reaches 16 hours. That classic 16.8 window lots of people know. Steps hit 5,000. And here's the shift. Down to 2 meals a day. Still home cooked.
So correlating the longer fast and higher steps with dropping a meal, that's a key transition point.
Exactly. It wasn't just about when, but also how often they ate, changing together.
Okay, moving on. Month 6.
17-hour fast, 6,000 steps, 2 meals daily, home cooked.
Month 7.
18-hour fast, 7,000 steps, 2 meals, home cooked.
Month 8.
19-hour fast, 8,000 steps, 2 meals, home cooked.
Month 9.
20-hour fast, 9,000 steps, 2 meals, home cooked. Getting pretty intense now.
And then month 10, another big shift.
Yep. Fasting window hits 21 hours, steps reach 10,000, and they drop down to just 1 meal per day, hitting that OMAD target for weekdays, home cooked, of course.
Wow. So OMAD starts at month 10, then month 11.
22-hour fast, 11,000 steps, 1 home-cooked meal.
And finally, month 12.
They reach the full plan. 23-hour fast window, effectively OMAD. The 12,000 steps goal achieved. 1 home-cooked meal daily, Monday to Friday.
That is incredibly methodical. A year-long, very controlled ramp-up.
The dedication is immense. But the insight there is maybe the power of making changes gradually. Small steps each month add up to a huge transformation over the year.
And crucial to remember, that weekend flexibility was always there, right? Throughout the whole 12 months, no fasting, okay to eat out.
Yes, they stress that. Seems vital for making such a strict weekday plan sustainable, like a pressure release valve.
Makes sense. Now, beyond the big picture of diet, fasting, exercise, they shared a lot of very specific, almost granular tips they used.
Oh yeah, some really interesting practical details. For instance, supplementation. They recommended B12 if you're going fully vegan.
Okay, that's pretty standard advice for vegans.
Standard, yes. But then things got less standard, especially with oral hygiene.
Right, get this. They suggested avoiding regular mouthwash and toothpaste.
Yeah, definitely unconventional. Goes against typical advice. But in their experience, they use DIY stuff. For gums, a paste made from coconut oil, turmeric powder, and clove powder.
Turmeric and clove. Wow, okay. And for cleaning teeth?
A different paste. Baking soda, about 25%, salt, 25%, and ginger powder making up the other 50%.
Baking soda, salt, ginger.
Now, they don't explain the why in the source,
Yeah.
the reasoning behind choosing these or avoiding the usual stuff, but these ingredients pop up in natural remedy discussions sometimes. Baking soda for cleaning, salt maybe for abrasion or antimicrobial properties, turmeric, clove, ginger, often linked to anti-inflammatory or antibacterial ideas.
It really underscores how personalized this whole thing was. They were looking at everything, even their toothbrushing routine.
Totally. And their mouthwash alternative.
What was it?
Clove tea.
Yeah.
Just brewed cloves.
Interesting. Consistent theme there with the cloves.
Yeah.
Okay, what about food prep? Any unusual tips there?
Yes. They recommended cooking rice, potatoes, or pasta, then refrigerating them for a full 24 hours before you eat them or reheat them.
Refrigerate cooked starches for a day. Why?
Again, the source doesn't spell out there why. But, one possible connection people talk about is resistant starch. Cooling cooked starches can sometimes increase this type of starch.
And resistant starch acts differently in the body, right? More like fiber.
Kinda, yeah. Affects digestion, blood sugar response, gut bacteria differently than freshly cooked, hot starch. Whether that was their specific reason or not, it's a notable detail they included.
Definitely an unusual step. They also mentioned doing something similar with bread.
Yeah, freezing bread for 24 hours before toasting or reheating it. Another specific food handling tip from their personal playbook.
Okay. Any specific foods they make sure to add to their diet?
Legumes were highlighted. Specifically mentioned lentils, peas, broad beans, chickpeas, and soybeans. Good, solid plant-based protein and fiber sources.
Makes sense for a vegan diet. What about after meals? Any rituals?
Yes, a very specific combo. 1 walnut, 4 Brazil nuts, and a few dates right after eating.
Brazil nuts for selenium, walnuts for omega-3s, dates for some fiber and sweetness. A deliberate little nutrient pack.
Seems like it. Just something they found worked for them.
Apple cider vinegar often comes up in health discussions. Did they use it?
They did. 2 tablespoons in about 500 milliliters of water, taken before meals.
Okay, and they had a practical tip for that too.
Yes, use a straw to protect your teeth from the acid.
Yeah.
Good advice if you're doing that regularly.
Definitely. And meal order. Did they have thoughts on how to eat the food on the plate?
They did. Eat vegetables first, then proteins and fats, and save the starches and sugars for last.
The eat your veggies first strategy. The idea being fiber and protein might slow down the absorption of the carbs that follow.
That's often the thinking behind it, yeah. Helping manage blood sugar spikes.
Got it. And just to be clear, during those fasting hours, what could they drink?
Strictly the basics. Water, black coffee, black tea, and green tea. Nothing with calories.
Okay, keeping it clean during the fast. Now, that end goal, the OMAD, or 23-hour fast, sounds intense to maintain long-term. Did they address that?
They did. They noted that after sticking with that OMAD, or near 24-hour fasting, for maybe 4 to 6 months, one could potentially ease back.
Ease back to what?
Back to 2 meals a day. Essentially, returning to that 16.8 intermittent fasting pattern.
Yeah.
So the most intense phase maybe served a purpose, but wasn't necessarily meant to be forever. It could become a maintenance phase.
That's an important nuance for sustainability.
And this leads us back to the most critical disclaimer, the one they really emphasized.
Which is?
That this whole detailed plan, every single step, is purely based on their own personal experience. It's shared so that you, the listener, can see what one person did and use it as a jumping-off point for your own research and thinking, not as a prescription.
Absolutely crucial takeaway. They also mentioned looking into work by Dr. Jason Fung and provided a link related to 24-hour fasting in their notes.
Right, indicating some potential influences or resources they explored on their own path, which we're just noting were part of the source material.
So when you step back and look at this whole account, wow. It's an incredibly structured, deeply personalized system built over many years.
It really is. It wasn't just one diet tweak or adding some exercise. It was a complete overhaul diet, intense exercise, gradually implemented fasting, even down to these unique daily habits like the oral care and food prep.
A real personal blueprint forged through persistence and self-experimentation. So as you're listening and taking all this in, think about what parts of this very detailed journey stand out most to you.
Was it the slow, methodical buildup of the fasting and steps? Or maybe those really specific, almost unusual tips like the DIY toothpaste or refrigerating rice? Or just the sheer dedication over more than a decade?
Yeah, lots to digest there. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What does this incredibly detailed personal story suggest about the potential, maybe even the power, of individual experimentation, especially, when the standard routes haven't brought the relief someone is looking for?
It's a powerful case study in persistence and taking ownership, isn't it?
Yeah.
A reminder that sometimes the answers we seek require a really deep, personal, and often long-term investigation.